So, what are we talking about today? I'm sorry, I'm probably supposed to have known.
We are talking about spirituality, marketing and business, and money.
Okay. That sounds great.
So
I'm all for that.
Trivia then. Trivia.
Trivial stuff. Filthy lucre.
Yeah.
Unrighteous mammon.
That's it. That's what I want to know about, you know. I just sent out to my newsletter saying that applying 80-20, I'm giving up Facebook for 2014. I'm going to use that half hour a day to do something useful. And I said to them that reading your book was the key moment for me of 2013. So thank you again.
Wow.
For that work.
That's great.
It's made a real difference, and I think that is one of the central points to what we're looking at. So you see, one of the things that I got out of that book was an insight into. It gave me a new perspective on wealth, my relationship to money, my relationship to wealth, and you know, because I mean, I remember as a young man.
Are you recording, by the way? This is good.
Sorry?
Are you recording? Because this is good.
Yeah. I'm recording.
Okay, good.
I'll share this with you. So, you know, when I was young, I know that I was kind of, I had a fear and a distaste of wealth. You know, that to have any more than I needed was dirty, like the filthy lucre, like you say. Reading your book gave me a new perspective on that. You know, the ability to outsource jobs that I didn't have to do, but somebody else would be happy to do and be paid to do, was so simple, but an eye-opener for me. So I thought, you know, and I've been talking about this kind of stuff as we've kind of scraped away the layers, working with my own Pro Web Design Alliance group. You know, quite a lot of the things that we explore together, when we peel away enough layers, comes down to who we think we are, what we think we deserve, how we relate to other people, how we relate to clients. Taking a stand for being an expert, even when you don't have all the proof to say, yes, you are the best in the world. Having the guts to charge hundreds of dollars an hour for what you do. You know, this is, a lot of this comes down to really deep stuff, and it comes down to what your experience was like growing up, how your parents related to money, the story about money that you grew up with. So we decided to put a short ebook together on spirituality and marketing and money. So what I'm wanting to do is just to interview a handful of people that I respect and admire, and that I think have something to add to this. So,
wow, great! That's a fabulous topic. I love it.
Yeah, I think it deserves a book on its own. So, there are a few key questions that I'm using as a framework for this, and the first one really comes down to who you are, who you believe, who you think you are in the scheme of the universe. You know,
like me.
Yeah, let's start.
Everybody.
Well, let's start with you. And then we'll move on to everybody else.
My goodness! Wow. Well,
who is Perry?
Well, you know, my 80-20 book was originally in the beginning inspired by Richard Koch's book, The 80-20 Principle. And very few people realize how wide-ranging Richard is on a whole bunch of topics. And he's got this book called Suicide of the West. I just read it about a month ago, and it's absolutely brilliant. And what it is, so by the way, I visited Richard a month ago. I was in Portugal a month ago, hanging out with him, which was pretty cool. He's worth a couple $100 million, and my wife was talking to me after I come back from somewhere, and she goes, "So where are you going next?" And I'm like, nowhere. It's not like I have to have a next place that I'm going, okay? But she was like, "Oh, well, you got to have something." And she's digging around. I go, "Well, Richard said I could come stay at his guest house sometime." She's like, "What, this guy is this successful? He's invited you to come see him, and you haven't done this yet. Why?" I'm like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Well, buy your plane ticket because you're going." Okay. So, it's good to have a wife that, prods you, to do stuff, right? Well, that was really an eye-opening trip because I came to understand that Richard hadn't written half a dozen books. He'd actually written 20. And I also found out that he actually spends most of his time writing, not running his business. And he still grows his empire at double digits a year, which is incredibly impressive if you think about it, okay? And so anyway, so I read this book, and in this book, he makes the case that he asks a great question. He says, what made Western civilization great as compared to all the other civilizations that have come and gone, and in many cases been pretty unsuccessful? So what are the things? And he has a list of 6 things that he says made the West great. And they are, here's what his list is. Christianity, optimism, economic growth, science, equality, and liberalism. Liberalism really meaning equality. So actually, I only told you 5, and the 6th one is individualism. Okay? And, the funny thing is, I am more or less a traditional Christian, and Richard is not. However, his chapter on Christianity was extraordinary. I was really impressed because I read stuff like this, and I'm not easy to impress, but I really was impressed. And he explained how Christianity gave birth to the other 5 things on the list. Okay? Now, so let me unpack that because that's actually completely pertinent to the question that you asked. As soon as you say, who are you? That is a metaphysical and essentially religious question, okay? Even a materialist, atheist, Darwinist is providing a religious answer to the question. Even if their answer is, the universe is, you're the result of blind chance and chaos, that is still an answer, okay? And actually, it's not a very edifying or noble answer at all. In fact, I think it's a crappy answer, but it's an answer, okay? And so I don't think you can separate this question from being essentially a spiritual question. This is why people obsess over things like, so where did we all come from, and all of that, all right? Now, I believe I'm a scientific person. I'm an engineer. We don't have time to go into this discussion, but, I believe in evolution, but I also believe that humans are fundamentally spiritual creatures, that there is a fundamental difference between humans and animals, and it's not just like how many neurons they've got, and it's not just how many chromosomes they have. It's much deeper than that. I believe that humans are made in the image of God. Now, what that means is, I believe that God made human beings to be immensely beautiful, powerful, amazing creatures. Okay? I really believe that. I believe it down to my bones. Okay? I believe that everything on earth that we would label as dehumanizing, right? We all know that word. All the stuff that's dehumanizing is clawing against that identity and against that that thing of being made in the image of God. You know, whether it's children starving in some country in Asia, or whether it's, you know, Stalin or genocides or drunks laying in the gutter, you know, any of that stuff. That is the war against how we're made in God's image. Okay, and so if we were in our perfect state, and if we could get rid of all of our flaws and all of that, what we would be is kings and queens and princes and princesses. Okay, there's a reason why all the movies for little girls are princess stories. Okay, there's a reason why all the movies for little boys are adventure stories. Okay, this is not an accident. This is not an accident at all. This is who we are. And so, you know, if you never quite could get okay with just following the taillights on the expressway to the next exit and going to your job and going through the motions every day, if you could never quite be okay with that, I believe that's because you're made in the image of God. Okay? You were never designed to be just that. Okay? I think we're designed for something much greater. But again, if you look at any great movie, I mean, I don't care if it's Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Braveheart or anything.
They're all heroes' journeys.
They're all heroes' journeys, and the way the story always begins is everything was okay, or it was sort of okay, or there might even have been some faint memory of perfection somewhere, but then, you know, the big cudgel came through the door, you know, and the army burned the village, and the disaster ensued, and now this hero has to go, you know, carry the ring to Mordor, right? Or pick up the lightsaber and go after Darth Vader or whatever it is, okay? So that is also the human story. So, you know, don't ask me to explain why, but human beings have also been birthed into this scary, tragic movie where the villages have been burned, and, you know, and all hope is lost, and we got to carry the ring to Mordor. Okay? And so, and no man really feels like a man unless he is on that adventure. Okay? And, you know, let's call it the masculine, instead of saying man and woman, let's say masculine energy, feminine energy, because women can be Frodo, okay? But men can be Frodo. And also, you know, women could be the princess that the valiant warrior is trying to rescue, and actually men could be the person that somebody's trying to rescue. But, you know, the feminine energy wants somebody to fight for them. They want to believe, the woman wants to believe that somebody's willing to fight for her, even to the death. Now that's sexy, right? That's somebody you can fall in love with. So I believe that we're all birthed into this adventure, and we all are divinely given talents and abilities and skills and genetic dispositions and inclinations. And one of the things we're here to figure out is, well, what is that toolbox of gifts that I've been given, and how far can I develop it? So when you say, who's Perry Marshall, like, I don't even think I can answer that question until I give you a little bit of background, you know? And then, you know, and going back to Richard's book, you know, he explains how this Christianity actually completely changed people's idea of their relationship with God, because the ancient religions, God was there might be one God, or there might be a million of them, but they're all distant, and they're all, very often unconcerned with the affairs of any particular individual, and the universe is very indifferent and cruel. And, Jesus brought this whole different, he's talking about God like God is daddy, like he dandles you on his knee, and so this opened up the idea of the individual, that one individual can be possessed and inspired to completely transform the world, and that you actually can do it, and that if you have a message, then you should go preach it, and if you have a song, then you should go sing it, and so so I'm 44 years old, and I'm in my journey of figuring out what I can do in the world, right? And so I guess I believe that one of my missions and one of my passions is building entrepreneurs. When I was about 10 years ago, I got invited to speak at a seminar in Australia, and to make a long story short, I managed to wrangle a stopover in Nairobi, Kenya, on my way home. And the reason was because somebody I knew was running a relief organization for AIDS orphans in Kenya. And so I go see this guy, and he's running this AIDS orphan thing. And I spent a day and a half meeting all these poor kids and everything. Frankly, it was really depressing. I mean, he was doing a nice job, and the kids were getting fed and clothed and all this other stuff, but it was pretty sad. But on the second day, I said to the guy, he kept nagging me. It was like, okay, it's really nice to be charitable and to give them food and give them clothes, but how are they going to solve this problem permanently? And I said to George, I said, hey, have you ever heard of microloans? And he goes, yeah. Matter of fact, we do those too. He goes, you want to meet some microloan people? And I'm like, sure. Well, one of the people he takes me to meet is this guy named Paul, and Paul runs a cobbler shop in a village, and he fixes shoes for a living, which is ironic because Paul is crippled. And he's sitting there against the wall with his crutches against the wall, and he's fixing shoes, and there's a line of people in his shop, and I'm talking to him through the translator, and I noticed something. I noticed that Paul is different than everybody else I met in Africa. Everybody else I met that day, they were nice and they were kind, but they were kind of depressed, and they had this glazed look in their eye. Almost everybody, but he didn't. He's looking me in the eye, and it's very clear, and he's all there. And I'm talking to him, and he's feeding his kids, and they have uniforms for school, and they have books for school, and he's got a business, and people in the village are coming to him to get their shoes fixed, and he's taking pride in what he does. And he is part of the solution, not part of the problem. And all of a sudden, I have this epiphany. And the epiphany is, hey, wait a minute. The only way all these kids can end up not being AIDS orphans, and the only way that everybody has enough to eat, and the only way that Africa starts being a modern country with good human rights records and everything else, is more people like Paul. You could drop food out of airplanes, and it only band-aids the problem. You can send missionaries over, and they could build schools and do all this. It only band-aids the problem. You haven't solved the economic problem until you have people starting businesses and succeeding in businesses. And all of a sudden, I understood that what I do as an educator of entrepreneurs is really important. Like, it's really important. It's right up there with any cause, that you could bang the drum about. And all of a sudden, I felt different about, this job that I have in the world. And I'm very inspired about that. And, I believe that one of the biggest crimes you can ever commit is to exploit an entrepreneur. Okay? And frankly, there's a lot of exploitation going around because, everybody's selling something that's like how to get rich, and so, like, people have all these mixed feelings about getting rich, and, part of you wants to be a gazillionaire, and then part of you's like, you've been, like you were saying, well, I should just be happy with just enough. Well, look, if you're doing good things, then the more you have, the more good things you can do. And if you're doing bad things, the more you have, the more bad things you're going to do, right? I forget what the movie is. There's some movie that's in the theaters right now, and it's about Wall Street. And, basically, there's this whole side of Wall Street that's basically cocaine and hookers, and people not caring where the money comes from as long as it feeds their habit, right? Well, in that case, money could be really bad, right? But, in the case of people that are doing AIDS orphans in Nairobi, Kenya, money is good, and so it's not about money, it's about who you are. So you got to figure out who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the next question then is who is everybody else? Who are your customers? Who are the people at the deepest level? And I would assume that from what you've told me, they are princes, princesses, kings and queens in the image of God.
Yep.
But can everybody be wealthy? Can everybody be a king or queen or prince or princess? Can the world support 6 million Westerners?
Well, eventually it can. Okay. Now, there's this attitude. It's like, oh no. It's like, okay. There's 7 billion people in the world, and 1 billion of us have this lavish lifestyle, relatively, right? And oh no, if the other 6 billion have a lavish lifestyle, we're going to plunder the earth and destroy it. Well, look. You only have to go to China one time to see how bad the pollution is and to know that, like, yes, there is a problem, okay? But, I think it's downright racist for anybody to even suggest that other people shouldn't be allowed to have that lifestyle while they themselves are enjoying it, okay? I mean, what a bunch of bigotry. Okay, it's like, well, it's almost like, we got to keep them down. Look, I think all these problems are solvable. Okay. One of my favorite authors is Zane Pilzer, and he wrote a book about 20 years ago called Unlimited Wealth. And he goes through this whole explanation that at all time in history, the world has always been threatened with losing all of its energy. There was always this looming crisis. And 150 years ago, it was, we're about to run out of whale oil. And when all the whale oil runs out, all the machines are going to stop, and we're going to be plunged into, the black abyss. Okay, then they discovered crude oil and coal or whatever, and like they solved that problem. Well, it's like, what makes you think that, like petroleum is the final only solution, right? Or nuclear power? Why would anybody be so presumptive to think that we're not going to come up with something better? Because all of this is essentially an energy issue. If you can solve the energy problem, you can solve all that other stuff. if you have enough energy, you could boil the ocean if you need to and get rid of the pollution. The problems are solvable. Some people think the world is overpopulated. What I believe is one baby out of a billion will know how to feed 2 billion. That's what I believe. And so can everybody be wealthy? There isn't a reason in the world why everybody can't be wealthy. Not a reason in the world. There isn't a reason in the world why every citizen of the planet couldn't enjoy a $100,000 a year equivalent lifestyle. There's no reason.
I also wonder why we have this association between being wealthy and a high consumption lifestyle. Where does that come from? Having wealth doesn't necessarily mean that we have to overconsume, does it?
No. It also means you could buy experiences instead of buying things. That's certainly more where my life has gone in the last few years.
Yeah.
So, like I value experiences far more than things because nobody can take them away from you, right? Nobody can take away the perspective you get.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does wealth mean to you? What does money mean to you? I mean, we've already talked about money as being the score of how you're doing, whether that's doing good or doing bad. But if you're doing good, then the more money you attract is a sign of the gratitude that you're creating out in the world, or the value that you're creating out in the world, because people have traded that money for something that's worth more to them than the money.
Yeah, so money is stored human energy. That's what it is. And if you own money, then you have the ability to direct human energy. So if you go look around, you go, how many scientific discoveries are just around the corner, but they're waiting for funding, for somebody to do the research, right? How many products could be developed? How many technologies could be developed? How many, nonprofit organizations that are doing some really cool, amazing things? I know all kinds of, I think that the for-profit world and the non-profit world are very distinct from each other. There's definitely some things in the world that are money-making activities. And there are definitely some things you're never going to make, you're never going to make money helping AIDS orphans. That is an inherently cash-negative proposition, right? At least as far as any ingenuity I've ever seen and heard of, right? Maybe somebody will flip that around someday, but there are just so many things, and if you think about how much wealthier we are now than 200 years ago, that wealth was not stolen from somewhere. It was invented. It was invented by human ingenuity, right? And so all you're lacking is ingenuity.
Yeah, we are wealthier, we are better off than kings and queens of England and Spain and France 200 years ago. We live longer, we're healthier.
Most of us would not trade places with them.
Yeah. So money is, like you say, stored human energy, which gives you potential. Now, the Bible says that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It's often shortened to money is the root of all evil, which I think is untrue. But how do you distinguish the love of money or avarice, the worship of money? How do you square that with the pursuit of wealth?
Okay, it's very easy to worship money. It's really easy to slip into that. And I think all of us do, okay? But think about what's happening when you do that, okay? If you worship money, then you're taking the output, the productivity of all of these kings and queens and princesses in the world, and you're commoditizing it into something you can spend, and you're making it more valuable than the kings and queens and princesses that are all around us, right? And the next thing that happens is you're taking the kings and queens and princesses and you're making them into slaves, you know, and now they're toiling in the dungeons of Mordor, you know, like you see in Lord of the Rings. Now that's what's going on, right? And so I think you have to recognize money itself is a spiritual power. It's not just a unit of exchange or a currency or a symbol. It's not just that. It is something that either we own or it owns us. And the self-aware person always has to be asking, well, is the money owning me or am I owning the money? And it's no different with sex. It's no different with power of any kind. You know, money, sex, and power, right? The three things.
They're all power. They're all energy of a kind.
Right. And, you know, are you? If we're made in the image of God, then are you making the image of God into slaves, or are you recognizing that there's higher order, and that money is just supposed to help us discover what that image is, and you know how to use it and how to appropriate it.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating distinction. So, I mean, one of the way I'm starting off this book is with a quote from Bill Hicks, which you may know, that says, "Anyone here who's in advertising or marketing, kill yourself now." It's like, and that keeps ringing through my head, you know. But what he's talking about is people reducing everything into dollar signs, reducing everything into money. Now, do you believe that we are all called to be wealthy? No. I think there are Mother Teresas in the world who take vows of poverty. Okay, and that's fine. That's totally fine with that. What I don't believe is that anybody is supposed to be doomed to poverty. Mm-hmm. Okay? I think it's supposed to be a choice. And that also means that lots of people choose to be middle class, and that's absolutely fine. I don't think that everybody's an entrepreneur. I don't think everybody should be. I don't think everybody's an artist, right? I don't think everybody's like an accountant, right, or a cook, or a landscaper, right? I mean, we have all these different things, and people are all across the spectrum, you know. But what you start to understand, especially when I started to travel, you know, when my finances began to loosen up a little bit, I started to go around the world. You know, it's not actually that expensive to go to Africa or to go to China, or right? It's very doable once you have a little bit of money. And all of a sudden, I started really seeing how it all works. It's like, oh man, all this poverty it's totally unnecessary, right? So that's the thing. You know, I want to what you said about, you know, that guy in the quote that he made. Okay, so, you know, the modern news media has been reduced to cost per click and cost per impression, okay? The value of a newspaper article has now become how much click revenue do they get from the ads, and that's like it, okay? There's a book called Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday that explains this in exquisite detail. Okay, how much money you make from ads from an article is not how you decide what is news.
Okay? So, like, it's funny because 10 years ago, I was, one of the people that was teaching the whole world how to measure advertising, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like back then, like people didn't really understand, every advertisement should lead to an action, and the action should be measurable, and you should hold your dollars accountable for what they accomplish and all that. It's not really a new idea now. It was kind of a new idea to most people then. Okay, well, all right, just because that's true doesn't make you even an advertiser. That doesn't mean you're a slave to the click-through rate, because if you become a slave to a click-through rate, pretty soon you're writing ads that aren't even true just because people click on them, right? No, you have to have values above that. Right? That's just an encapsulated version of love of money is the root of all evil. So if you design your entire newspaper around click-through rates, then you're gonna have some, some pop star twerking is like more important than, kids being refugees in Sudan, right? And so that just goes back to, so an advertiser, a marketer, a salesperson, an entrepreneur who has a conscious and awareness of priorities is the most important thing.
Great. So what advice would you give to a spiritually aware entrepreneur who chooses wealth, but wants to, who wants to attract wealth so that they can do more good in the world, but without being a slave to it? What techniques, thoughts, advice have you got for managing the beast?
Well, I think you really need to find a spiritual center, okay? And I'm not going to get preachy about that or go into a bunch of detail. I think everybody kind of knows what I mean. Like, you need to be really clear about what is your larger set of values, okay? And you be working on that all the time.
Yeah. Well, this...
Okay? But once that's in...
Yeah. Sorry, in this book, I'm wanting to look at, I'm not going to shy away from the religious perspectives, because, we have, we've got insights from Christians, from Muslims, from people who follow Native American spirituality, all kinds of aspects, and they're all valid. So I want this book to help people wherever they are to be able to interpret this. So lay on me the orthodox, the true biblical, if you like, Christian perspective on the proper relationship with money. For example, let's take the teaching, it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Was that talking about the particular rich man and the fact that when Jesus sent him away, he said, okay, here's what you need to do. Go away, give all your wealth away, and then come back. Right? And then we're in business. And the guy couldn't do that because he valued the wealth. The wealth was the purpose of his life. It was ultimately the center of his life, right? So was that saying in regard to the money lover rather than the rich man?
So I think that whole conversation came down to the issue of what you would call idolatry. Jesus had a stunning ability to put his finger on the core issue. Okay? When Jesus says to the religious leaders, so are you mad at me for forgiving the guy's sin, or are you mad at me for saying, rise and walk. So to prove to you that I can forgive his sin, rise and walk. And the guy gets up and walks, right? And so, he has this pattern of like stumping people with these really penetrating questions. And so I think what is the case with everybody is, if you ever get to a point where you say, well, my relationship to money is more important than my calling and my mission and my values and my relationship to God, then I've just decided what my idol is. Okay? Yeah. And Jesus put his finger right on that guy's issue. And I think everybody, in a sense, no matter how much you're worth and no matter how much you have, everybody needs to hold it loosely and be willing to walk away from it if necessary, if it's corrupting who you are.
If it's dragging you down.
That's what Jesus meant when he said, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, because it's better to go to heaven with one hand than to go to hell with two. Right? What's he saying? He's saying, if there's something that grabs you by the throat so hard that you can't help but make it into an idol, you better get rid of it. Okay? So what that says to me is some people maybe are not going to steward money well and should not be trying to be wealthy. Okay? That's probably the case. Okay?
Yeah.
And I think you need your mentors and the people who know you and the spiritual people that you respect in your life to look at you and to be able to have conversations with you about how you're doing, right? Your friends will notice if you're starting to go wacko with your money. Like, if your friends start saying, gee, you're just not the same guy you used to be, that would be definitely a warning sign.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It'd be like, having an alcohol addiction and deciding to run a bar. It's just not a good idea. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the money changers in the temple? Money changers outside the temple. Jesus took a rope and made a whip and physically attacked these guys and physically drove them out in a rage.
Yeah.
Because they were dealing unfairly. Is fair dealing so central to Christianity in your view?
Well, yes, absolutely. It is, and there's, I think there's a verse that, there's 7 abominations, and one of them is an unjust scale, right? You think you're getting 2 pounds of hamburger, but you're only getting 1.5 pounds, not good. What Jesus said when he drove the money changers out of the temple was, my Father's house is a house of prayer, not, you could almost say, it's not a car lot. It's not a bunch of salesmen. There is this place where you separate the sacred from the secular. And I think maybe it's got something to do with Sabbath. Where you go on the Sabbath, you go to the temple and you worship. So, like, I'm really big on Sabbath or, taking a day off. Like, you should not work 7 days a week. If you are, it is a big mistake. And I did that for a long time, and I think it was a big mistake.
Yeah. Like, you shouldn't plant your crops in the field for, every year running, because eventually that soil's going to die. It's going to have no value left. And
right?
So working 365 days a year for money is like saying that money is the most important thing.
That's absolutely what it is. And yeah, it's scary. It makes us so much less.
Yeah. And any closing thoughts for for the readers of this book for how to, what would, if you were to look them in the eye and say, look, I can see you're kind of confused about money. Here's Perry's 60-second take on money and wealth.
Okay. I think that dreams are guided. And let me unpack that a little bit. I was in Amway for a long time, and you would always have this conversation with people like, well, if you had a lot of money, would you buy a Cadillac? And pretty soon, like, you're going on this big, long description of Cancun or something, right? And that's not what I'm talking about when I say dreams are God-given. I think some of those conversations can be, hey, let me just find a button that I can push with you to get you to do this thing that you otherwise wouldn't do, okay? But what I'm talking about is all of us have these stirrings deeper down. Okay, for example, like I bet this was at least 20 years ago, maybe almost 25. My wife and I have been married 24 years. We're listening to the radio, and somebody's talking about foster care and adoption, and Laura goes, I want to do that. And I'm like, you want to do what? Like, you got to be kidding, right? My first knee-jerk reaction to that was, oh, yeah, I know what goes on with that deal. You get a foster kid for like 3 months, and then you have to give them away. No, I don't want to sign up for that deal, right? But there was something in Laura that wanted to do that. It was her maternal instinct. Might have something to do with the fact that her dad was adopted. Well, you know what? Eventually, we actually did that. We had a foster daughter for about 3 months, and that was 15 years ago. And then we adopted a little girl 2 years ago from China, and we're adopting an 8-year-old boy next year or sometime. I don't know when, but it's going to happen. The paperwork is going through for it. Well, that's Laura's dream. Okay? It was like one of these things that would not go away. Okay? There might be somebody else, and they have a dream of a sushi restaurant. They want to own a sushi restaurant. And you couldn't even tell, like, how many times they've been daydreaming about that sushi restaurant. I think those dreams very often, they really are God-given. Or it's like, man, I've got to quit this job and go do my own thing, and that will not go away. You know what? That is probably one of those God-given dreams. You know what? It's time to start listening to it. Stop shoving it down. When you shove it down, it kills you sooner. Okay? That's what so money has something to do with it. But you know what? All the other dimensions of life have something to do with all those things too, right? And it all goes in a big stir fry. And some people are acutely aware of money. They're acutely aware of what you can do with money. They almost have this primal, drive to be financially successful. And many times, sometimes that's like an alcoholic looking for a drink, but I think many times it's really a God-given gift, and it should be cultivated.
Great, fantastic. Just one last thought then before we go. For the people who have it that money is distasteful and disgusting and dirty, what advice would you have for them?
Well, there's a lot of people growing up thinking also that sex is dirty and distasteful and dirty, right? We could just take out one word and swap in the other. Well, why do people think sex was that way? Well, several reasons. Usually it's because their parents thought that. Okay, right? And how did that get? Well, it was usually like some kind of shaming, thing that was done to somebody, and surprisingly often it's because there was abuse. Okay, I know a lot more about sexual abuse than I ever dreamed that I would ever want to know. Okay, it's and a lot of us could say that, right? Well, it means somebody has taken a very powerful and beautiful thing, and they have been very irresponsible with it. So what's the cure to that? The cure to that is spending time with people who know how to use it well.
Because we are
and
immersed
it's the same true with money.
Yeah, we're immersed in dirty sex wherever you look. I don't want to overplay it, but there's a lot of inappropriate sexual content out there. There's a lot of inappropriate use of money out there. But it doesn't make the money bad. That's what we're saying. The money by its definition is actually good. Before we had money, we had trouble trading. Money is a technological invention that allowed people to trade much more easily and much more fairly. Because if I produce eggs and you produce, hay carts, I'm gonna be paying you in eggs for it just doesn't work. So money is a good and a positive and an uplifting thing, and has really helped to boost the human race.
Yeah.
Just because there is bad use of money out there doesn't make money bad.
Right, and I think we should probably. I think the word porn is appropriate in this discussion. Okay, you show porn to 10-year-old kids, it damages them.
Yeah,
it does. Okay, most of us know that. Some people seem to be in denial about that. They can get all kinds of messages from that in 30 seconds that would take them years of counseling to untangle, right? And I think there's a similar truth to money. It's like, well, what have you seen? How have you seen money misused in your life, right? What have you, to borrow a phrase from Dan Kennedy, what have you heard about money from the top of the stairs? When you were a kid and your parents thought you were in bed and you were overhearing them talk about money and they didn't know you were there, what did you hear them say? Because that's what you go, well, that's the truth of it. Well, if they're sitting there, they're fighting and arguing about it, or they're going, oh my goodness, there's never enough, or oh my goodness, my boss is such a tyrant. Those beliefs go in really deep, and so just like a lot of us might need to go to counseling to sort out our sex issues or our relationship issues, a lot of us might need to, in some way, shape, or form, go to counseling about money, right? And really get clean. And if you ever go to a counselor, the first thing they're teaching you how to do is just listen to your own self.
Yes, it's like the financial so-so course that you talked about.
Yeah. So, boy, Ben, these are really great questions. Seriously good questions.
Yeah.
You get a gold star today.
So the problem then, don't look at the money. Don't look at money. It's not money. It's not sex. It's not business. It's not whatever. Look at yourself. Know thyself. Yeah. And figure out who. Yeah. I think we're going back to the beginning. Who are you? What is your place in the universe? Where do you stand with relation to others? With relation to the divine? And what is true for you? Because not everyone's called to be royal. Not everyone's called to be wealthy and royal like Solomon or David.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, don't think that you can't. Don't think that you shouldn't. Find out what's right for you through honest, completely honest, open reflection, prayer, if you like, and find your own path.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Thumbs up.